What's up guys, it's Third Eye V1 coming back at you again with my intellect. And in this video, I'll be explaining how LeBron James can affect Kevin Durant's career if he decides to play in the Western Conference. Stay tuned. Three weeks ago, news came out that LeBron James would love to play with Russell Westbrook. Just let that sink in for a few seconds. Yeah, I know, right? That would be crazy. And we all know how much of a powerhouse LeBron is, but we still have to do some digging. In the past 7 years, LeBron has been to 7 straight NBA Finals consecutively. He's one of the only players to do this in NBA history. Other players to reach 7 straight NBA Finals were James Jones. Despite being a mediocre bench player for most of his career, he was also able to reach the NBA Finals consecutively because he was teammates with LeBron from Miami to Cleveland. They were teammates from 2010 till this year, before James Jones decided to finally retire this off-season. Other players to accomplish this are Casey Jones, an 8-time NBA champion who played for the Boston Celtics his whole career, with career averages of 7.4 points per game, 3.5 rebounds per game, and 4.3 assists per game. Bob Cousy, he's a 6-time NBA champion, the 1957 NBA MVP, a 13-time NBA All-Star, a 2-time All-Star MVP, made it to the All-NBA First Team 10 times, and made it to the All-Second Team 2 times, and an 8-time NBA assist leader, with career averages of 18.4 points per game, 5.2 rebounds per game, and 7.5 assists per game. He also played for the Boston Celtics his whole career. LeBron passed players Bill Sharman, who made it to the NBA Finals 5 times in a row, and Tom Sanders, who made it to the NBA Finals 6 times in a row. The only players to go to the NBA Finals more than 7 times are Frank Ramsey, Tom Heinsohn, Sam Jones, and Bill Russell. LeBron is also the first NBA player in NBA history to average a triple-double in the NBA Finals. He averaged 33.6 points per game, 12 rebounds per game, and 10 assists per game, but lost in 5 games to the Golden State Warriors. I don't think that this final streak will end for LeBron this upcoming season, because teams haven't gotten better than Cleveland yet. LeBron is also responsible for a lot of players not getting a shot at competing to win an NBA championship. For example, Derrick Rose. He was a young rising star since he stepped into the league. He was the number 1 overall pick, and in his first year, he averaged 16.8 points per game, 6.3 assists per game, and 3.9 rebounds per game, shooting 47.5% from the field and 22.2% from the 3-point line. He wasn't a very good 3-point shooter at any time in his career. He still isn't. He won the NBA Rookie of the Year award. He also made the playoffs in his first season. He averaged a solid 19.7 points per game and 6.4 assists per game and 6.3 rebounds per game, and shot 49.2% from the field in his playoff debut, but lost to the experienced Boston Celtics that had Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and Rajon Rondo that won the championship the season before when they beat the Los Angeles Lakers in the finals. The Bulls lost to them in a 7-game series in the first round of the 2009 playoffs. Derrick Rose even had a better year his sophomore season. During the season, he averaged 20.8 points per game, 6 assists per game, and 3.8 rebounds per game, and shot 26.7% from the 3-point line and 48.9% from the field. The Bulls were able to make the playoffs again, but lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers in the first round in 5 games. This was the first time Rose lost to LeBron in the playoffs, but no one was expecting Chicago to win anyways. During the season, they had 41 wins and 41 losses. Cleveland had 61 wins and 21 losses. Cleveland had the best record that year in the NBA in the 2009 and 2010 season. This was the second consecutive time that Chicago had a 500 record and was 8th seed in the playoffs. In this series, Rose averaged 26.8 points per game, 7.2 rebounds per game, and 3.4 rebounds per game, and shot 33.3% from the 3-point line and 45.6% from the field. Things drastically changed the next season for the Chicago Bulls and Derrick Rose. There was a big leap. This was Rose's 3rd year. He averaged 25 points per game, finally cracking single digits in steals per game by averaging 1 steal per game, 7.7 assists per game, and averaged 4.1 rebounds per game. He won the MVP award this season. He became the youngest NBA player in NBA history to win this award. He was the age of 22. He also led the Chicago Bulls to have the best record in the NBA that season. They had a record of 62 wins and 20 losses. They also made it to the Eastern Conference Finals during this season, but they lost to the Miami Heat in 5 games. This was the second time that Rose lost to LeBron in the playoffs. There should be no excuse for Derrick Rose, even if you are a fan. And him being young shouldn't be an excuse either. And I get it, nobody's the same, and not everybody's gonna be like LeBron, but Rose doesn't get a pass for losing the second time in the playoffs to LeBron. Here's why. Derrick Rose is very fortunate. By his 3rd year in the league, league, he's been to 3 consecutive NBA playoffs. When Rose was drafted to Chicago had a record of 33 wins and 49 losses. They were 11th in the Eastern Conference Finals. They didn't qualify for the playoffs, but you can clearly see the impact that Derrick Rose had on the Chicago Bulls because the next season they immediately made it to the playoffs. LeBron wasn't as fortunate as Derrick Rose. When LeBron was drafted number 1 by the Cleveland Cavaliers, they had a record of 17 wins and 65 losses. They were 15th in the Eastern Conference Finals seeding. LeBron didn't make it to the playoffs until his 3rd season. In his playoff debut, he lost to the heavy-loaded Detroit Pistons that had Ben Wallace, Tayshaun Prince, Richard Hamilton, Rasheed Wallace, and Chauncey Billups in the second round of conference semifinals in the 2006 NBA playoffs. The Cleveland Cavaliers were able to make the playoffs the next season. In the 2007 playoffs, they were able to advance further. They beat the Detroit Pistons in the conference finals in 6 games. This would be the first time that LeBron went to the NBA finals in his career, but unfortunately they got swept by the San Antonio Spurs. This is the point that I'm making. LeBron comes back and beats the same team that beat him the previous year before in the conference finals. During that season, the Detroit Pistons had the best record in the East with a record of 53 wins and 29 losses. Cleveland had the second best record in the East. They had a record of 50 wins and 32 losses. Detroit won the regular season series 3-1. So technically, Cleveland had no business beating them in the conference finals that year. Detroit had 5 All-Stars when Cleveland just had 2. Chauncey Billups is a 5-time All-Star. Richard Hamilton is a 3-time All-Star. Rasheed Wallace is a 4-time All-Star. Chris Webber is a 5-time All-Star, even though in 2007 he was a shell of his former self due to him experiencing a lot of knee injuries in his career. He was able to average throughout the playoffs 9.9 points per game, 1.5 assists per game, and 6.3 rebounds per game. Antonio McDyess, he's a 1-time All-Star. He was also a shell of his former self after he suffered the patella tendon rupture that he suffered back in the 2001 to 2002 season. Throughout the 2007 playoffs, he averaged 5.8 points per game, 1.1 assists per game, and 7.1 rebounds per game. Cleveland only had 2 All-Stars, LeBron and Zydrunas Ilgauskas. Due to LeBron playing great, he carried Cleveland through. In his second playoff appearance during his career, you can make an argument that Ben Wallace wasn't there in 2007 because he ended up on the Chicago Bulls, because prior to this season, the season before, when Ben Wallace was there, they had a record of 64 wins and 18 losses. That argument wouldn't be valid enough because Detroit still had way more than Cleveland and more experience. So looking back at it, LeBron prevailing and passing them in the conference finals is such a great accomplishment. The scenario was the same for Derrick Rose. At the time, in 2011, Chicago had 2 All-Stars, which was Derrick Rose and Carlos Boozer, and Miami had All-Stars and 2 were a shell of their former selves. Zydrunas Ilgauskas, who was an All-Star in 2003 and 2005, throughout the playoffs he averaged 3.6 points per game and 3.6 rebounds per game, playing 11.6 minutes. And Juwan Howard, throughout the 2011 playoffs, he averaged 1.5 points and played 5.5 minutes. Chicago also swept the Miami Heat in the regular season 3-0, and Chicago had the best record throughout the NBA. Their record was 62 wins and 20 losses, and Miami was second seed in the East behind the Chicago Bulls with 58 wins and 24 losses. So that's my point. The Chicago Bulls had a fully loaded squad with Derrick Rose being the leader, so there should be no excuse why Derrick Rose never beat LeBron the second time he versed him in the playoffs. The 2010 to 2011 Chicago Bulls roster was way better than the roster that Cleveland had back in 2006 and 2007. Rose averaged 27 points per game, 1.4 steals per game, 7.7 assists per game, 4.3 rebounds per game, and shot 24.8% from the 3-point line and 39.6% from the field in 16 games of the 2011 playoffs. Unfortunately, this was the closest Rose got the chance to making it to the NBA Finals, because in the next season Rose got injured and was only able to play 39 games. He did make a playoff appearance, but in the first game he planted hard with 2 feet hitting the floor, but he landed too hard and that's what caused him to tear his ACL while Chicago was playing the Philadelphia 76ers during the first round of the 2012 playoffs. Rose was never the same again in his career. LeBron ruined Rose's only chance of making it to the NBA Finals during his prime, because if LeBron wasn't in the picture, he'd definitely make it to the NBA Finals if the Chicago Bulls versed anybody else that year during the playoffs. Another player that LeBron got into the way of was Paul George. He never had the impact that Derrick Rose has had in his career, but he's a star. He's a 4-time All-Star, made it to the All-Defensive First Team in 2014, and made it to the All-Defensive Second Team 2 times, and was the NBA 2013 Most Improved Player, and made it to the All-Rookie Second Team back in 2011. What the Detroit Pistons was to Michael Jordan and the Bulls back in the day, Miami Heat and LeBron was to Paul George and the Indiana Pacers. Jordan and the Chicago Bulls were eliminated in the 1988 Eastern Conference semifinals to the Detroit Pistons. Then the next year, 1989, lost to the Detroit Pistons again, but this time it was in the conference finals. Then the Bulls lost to them again in the 1990 conference finals. Then the next year, the Bulls came back and swept the Detroit Pistons in the 1991 conference finals to advance to the NBA finals. In Paul George's second playoff appearance in his sophomore season, Indiana lost to the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference semifinals. Then the next year in 2013, lost to the Miami Heat again in the conference finals. And in 2014, lost again to the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference finals. But unfortunately, during the NBA 2014 offseason, Paul George severely broke his leg while playing scrimmage with the USA basketball team. During the 2014 to 2015 season, Paul George made a comeback around the end of the season and played just 6 games. Indiana never made the playoffs that year. Who knows what would have happened if Paul George never got injured? With him and Indiana, maybe he would prevail the 4th time just like Jordan did against Detroit. Who knows? LeBron is also the cause of the Atlanta Hawks not making it to the finals back in 2015 after they had such a great season, winning 60 games and just losing 22 games. Some people counted out the Cavaliers. I'm not gonna lie, I was one of those people too, because during the regular season series, Atlanta led the Cleveland Cavaliers 3-1, but in the Eastern Conference Finals, Cleveland swept the Atlanta Hawks. LeBron is also the cause of the Toronto Raptors not making it to the finals for the first time in their franchise history. I'm not attributing all the credit to LeBron, because during most of these finals runs, he had help, but let's be honest, it's due to his star playing why most of the teams that he's on are successful. LeBron has affected Kevin Durant the same way in his career, and I definitely think if LeBron goes out west, he'll affect Kevin Durant's career even more. Kevin Durant is 9-19 against LeBron in his career. LeBron beat him more times than Kevin Durant beat him, and that includes the playoffs. It was said that Kevin Durant didn't even want to go play in the Eastern Conference because he'd be going up against LeBron. Take a look.
I'm telling you as somebody who covers the NBA that there are many people who believe that Kevin Durant wants no part of an Eastern Conference team because he doesn't want to have to go through, he doesn't want to have to face LeBron until he absolutely positively has to, which would mean in the finals. He doesn't want to face LeBron before the finals. They believe that had a lot to do with him not ending up in Miami. They believe that had a lot to do with him not ending up in Washington.
Overall, LeBron playing on the same team with Russell Westbrook would be deadly. These two had the most triple-doubles out of anyone in the league this decade. LeBron has 36 triple-doubles, and Westbrook has a total of 77 triple-doubles. To get so much triple-doubles, you obviously have to be ball dominant. And I know a lot of people would say that LeBron and Russell Westbrook can't coexist. Because both of them are so ball dominant, that's why it wouldn't work. But I don't think that's true. Russell Westbrook would be the perfect player for LeBron to play with right now. Because LeBron is aging, so he would need a younger guy to carry most of the load. Even though LeBron is in great shape at the age he's at in his career, he's not a robot. Everyone gets old. And as you get old, we all know that our bodies break down. And since LeBron is a point forward, Russell Westbrook can sometimes become the 2 guard, while LeBron brings up the ball, which he shouldn't have a problem with doing because he was actually a 2 guard before coming to the NBA when he was at UCLA. And we all know playing with LeBron elevates your game. He's like a Greg Popovich but a player version. And when Westbrook starts to bring up the ball, LeBron can return to his original position, the small forward. This would definitely tamper with what Golden State has going on for them right now, being that they're the best team in the West. I can see them being knocked out if this really did happen in the Western Conference Finals. Russell Westbrook and LeBron playing on the same team, success would come down to who's paired up beside them and who's willing to play the role and take a back seat, depending on where LeBron decides to go. Because we all know that Paul George is on OKC, and now OKC just got Carmelo Anthony. But even though Carmelo and Paul George are on OKC now, if LeBron decided to go there, he can still play the same way between him and Westbrook, just like I explained before. And Carmelo Anthony and Paul George are the perfect players to have around a player like Westbrook and a player like LeBron. Because Westbrook and LeBron are unstoppable when they drive to the basket. Nobody in the league can stop them. So if the defense tried to collapse on either player, they can just kick it out to Carmelo or Paul George for a shot. Because Carmelo and Paul George have the ability to shoot. Overall, this would be a deadly team because Paul George is a complementary player, so he wouldn't get in the way of Westbrook or LeBron, and he's a two-way player. He's one of the best two-way players in the league. He can play defense and he's very good offensively, and Carmelo doesn't have any pressure on him. All he would need to do is play some 4 and score the ball and rebound and guard some of the best power forwards in the league. And Carmelo is the perfect stretch 4. What Kevin Love is to Cleveland, Carmelo is going to have to be that for Oklahoma City. And now news just broke out out that Dwayne Wade is going to Cleveland. If I was LeBron, I would stay, because now having Dwayne Wade, it puts Cleveland in a better position to win a ring this year. And he has finals experience, he's won a ring without LeBron, and 2 with LeBron, and they are very close friends, and they have chemistry with each other. And Dwayne Wade brings more veteran experience to Cleveland. If LeBron does leave Cleveland next offseason, the best place that I see him fitting is the Oklahoma City Thunder, because I know Carmelo, Westbrook, and Paul George aren't gonna leave if the outcome is good this upcoming season. And nobody can ridicule LeBron if he made this move, because he has never joined a team that beat him. He's proven that he's a true champion, and based off of what Kevin Durant did last year, I don't care if any other player wants to team up with any other player, even though I'm not really a fan of that. But I've accepted that's just the day we live in, and that's what most of these players are doing. So it is what it is. And Cleveland still doesn't have much to go through to get to the NBA Finals. Their biggest opposition, in my opinion, is Milwaukee, because Milwaukee is a dynasty in the making. And yes, Boston made some great moves this offseason, but they're still not good enough to beat Cleveland just yet. Maybe in a year or two. But that's it for the video, guys. Please like and subscribe and hit that notification button. Peace.
Look, I can be like Mike, I can hook or jab, on my toes scratch grab, or I can take flight. I can be like Mike, I can hook or jab, on my toes scratch grab, or I can take flight.